You know, some of you keep asking me when I'm going to complete the Ghetto Gaggers project. And I respect the fact that most of the brothers that are asking that have donated to me financially, and I appreciate that. But before I even begin, ironically, to get to the subject of this video, which is pretty obvious, I'm going to reiterate the reasons why I cannot, have not, and unless certain things change drastically, will not be able to get to the Ghetto Gaggers project. Number one, because I'm constantly working, I'm constantly busy, I'm constantly running errands, I'm constantly trying to keep myself self-employed and my business afloat. I'm a one-man crew, okay? And I'm more out and about than I am at home. As a result of this, the only video projects I can afford to do are relatively small to mid-range projects. And when I say small to mid-range projects, I mean anything from an hour and a half or less. Okay? And mid-range it takes a tremendous amount of work. And the smaller videos like this one, depending on how much work I decide to put into them, can take a tremendous amount of work. Now, to me, a smaller video project is something that is 20 minutes or less. To do a large video project like the Tiffany Jolene Conspiracy or the Ghetto Gaggers Project or America the Violent or any one of about a handful of major projects that I said in the past would be 3 hours at the very minimum, where I'm editing and narrating and adding all of these special effects and headers, would take a tremendous amount of effort. Just the editing alone of video clips would take weeks. Okay? I cannot, have not, and again, unless certain things change drastically, will not be able to get to those projects until or unless I can find a way to supplement some of, for some of what I have to do, okay, to make a decent living, where I can actually cut my work schedule, cut a fairly considerable portion of it to where I'm not always out and about ripping and running, and I can actually afford to be at home, sit in front of a computer, and, hang out on and live on YouTube like some motherfuckers do on here, not naming any names, okay? Now, that is going to be the subject matter, part of the subject matter of the next stream that I'm going to do in a relatively short period of time. I cannot tell you when that stream is going to happen, but it's definitely going to happen before the end of this month, probably before the first half of this month, okay? Because as I stated prior to that all-day live stream event that I did across 3 channels here on YouTube during the Bill Cosby sentencing, I do now have an intention of not doing it full-time, but being a part-time professional vlogger for the sole purpose of, finding an alternative way of making a living by basically doing what I love to do, which is making videos for you guys, okay? So I am going to go into detail about that, but make no mistake, okay? Again, I appreciate you brothers supporting my content, okay? But I'm not going to go out of my way to beg anybody for anything. If I don't make the if I don't meet the minimum requirements that I need financially to be able to take that portion of time, off of my schedule to be able to be home and work on larger projects, and do things like, hours long live streams with you guys. Those projects and that activity overall will not happen because my bills and my livelihood come first, hands down. So unless, people are ready to do what it takes to help me do that, as far as, what I've been talking with you guys about, you're asking those questions in vain. I'm just letting you know. Okay? The fact of the matter is, I'm not a major movie producer like a Steven Spielberg. You know what I'm saying? Or a Quentin Tarantino. Okay? I don't get paid to sit in a chair and, ride, down a freaking street with a camera on wheels, and direct actors and coordinators and stuntmen to do things and then take a break and go into my trailer and get my dick sucked by some bimbo that's going to come back 60 years later and accuse me of raping her. Okay? I don't have the luxury of that because I'm not getting paid to do this stuff. Okay? So in essence, this stuff that I'm doing, producing these videos, is literally a hobby at this point. If I can turn pro, meaning not, the quality of my content, because personally, out of all the content that I've seen on Black YouTube, I think my shit is up there, as far as research, as far as editing, as far as production. I think my shit is some of the best in the business. Of course, I think that because it's mine, but I also think I put a hell of a lot of effort into it. Okay? But the bigger projects, the only way I'm going to be able to do those is if I turn pro, which means, yes, I'm going to have to get financial support from my supporters. Otherwise, it's no use any of us even talking about that. Now, the title of this video. How do I even start this? It's actually pretty funny. The irony of this is this. I shit you not. Let me start this like this. In November of 2012, and I don't know if I ever told you guys this, I worked at a place, it was just a dead-end job, but I was making pretty decent money. And, I would go about, working my shift. And this was back when I was still in kind of like simp mode, pro-black mode and all that bullshit. And, I hadn't really been exposed to the treachery of the black female, and I hadn't had my eyes awoken by the overall dysfunction of the black community. One night, because I used to work third shift, and I did that for a course of about 2 years on that particular job. But one night, right before the place where I was working closed, this black girl came in, long weave strands and, in like a little gray jacket. And I couldn't see her up close, like what her face looked like that much. But she was, she had a nice figure and everything. And she looked relatively decent. Her figure looked relatively decent. I couldn't make out her face. But I say from where I was standing, she was decent in the face because her body was decent. And her head shape seemed like it was, in proportion to her body. And she was shopping for something, I see her, dip in and out of aisles or whatnot. And then, at first I only saw her. But then after a few minutes of, because, I was working in a particular department, going back and forth doing what I had to do, I noticed that this white boy popped up. You know, this little dusty haired white boy in a jacket popped up beside her when she came out of one of the aisles and started kind of moving closer towards where I was working at the time. And, you know, at first I didn't think anything of it until he kind of, you know, kind of bulged up behind her, and he was, you know, like he was almost, well, he was essentially after a few seconds touching her. And I realized at that moment that they were together. And I thought that was really weird because, you know, I had rarely seen things like this before, but I had not seen, you know, black females, you know, of her type with white boys of his type before. I had seen, you know, black girls with wiggers and, you know, fatsos and older white men, but this was a young white boy with a young black female, you know. And, you know, I thought that was really awkward. And at the time, being in simp mode, the more I thought about it later on, after I got off work, it kind of fucked with me. Because at the time, I thought that the black American female was, you know, loyal to black men. I thought at the time that the black female was worth chasing. I thought at the time that black females were everything that, you know, my family members, and that, you know, the history books and that the media told us they were, you know, strong, you know, black queens and all of that bullshit. And to see this black female with this type of white boy, it fucked with me at the time. See, at that time, I was under the impression that you could save these hoes. I was under the impression that, as Mr. Benzo said, you could caress these hoes and you could finesse these hoes. And, you know, I went through a point of kind of like disbelief and anxiety over this issue. And, you know, at first, you know, I did the same thing that these Captain Save-A-Ho niggas do nowadays. The first thing I tried to do was I tried to put the cover over my head because I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to connect what I was seeing with my eyeballs with what my brain was actually processing. So I put the cover over my head, you know. I pretended like I didn't see it. I pretended like it wasn't there. Then I started to notice, and keep in mind, this was 2012, right around the time when this whole swirling bullshit really started to get going, you know, where these swirlers were coming out of the closet, so to speak, like the homosexuals did in the late 90s. And, you know, I started to notice it out in the public, out and about more and more. So then I became, you know, my anxiety led me to a sense of desperation. I became curious. I said, no. This can't be actually happening. This can't be true. You know, no, the black female, no. This has to be some type of bad dream. This has to be all these females that I'm seeing out here, you know, with these white guys here and there. This has to be some type of bad joke. So I went on the internet to investigate, you know, because of course, being a simp and a Captain Save-A-Ho ass, pro-black fool, I didn't want to believe that the black queen was sleeping with what pro-blacks believed to be the enemy, right? So when I went on social media, what I came to notice was that on social media, what was being talked about and what was being shown by these black females was even worse than what I was seeing on the street. And you know, I started to keep count, believe it or not, and I still do to this day, but for a different reason. I started to keep count of every interracial relationship between blacks and whites that I saw. Because at first I wanted to keep track of it to see if this was really as bad as it was looking like it was. But now I keep track of it just to remind me of why I have little to no sympathy for. And as I said on JPV's stream, these females, these bimbos aren't even an inkling on my mind. Okay? I've evolved, you see. But even in my evolution, I keep track of these hoes. I keep track of them. I keep track of the things they do, both in and out of the black community. On social media, I keep track of it because it only continues to reinforce what I already know and my personal convictions of what I already feel about them. So I don't feel sorry. Like, say, when I see a black female name that comes up on clientele list of somebody that's interested in my services, and I mark that shit off the list. I don't feel sorry. I don't feel bad about that. What her needs and wants were, even if it was an emergency. I don't feel sorry. Because I have come to accept what I couldn't accept 6 years ago. And thus, I have seen these females for who and what they are. Judases. And as of today, which is pretty ironic, because today I actually saw 2 black male, white female couples and a black female and a white male couple in the city where I reside. And it's pretty funny because, nowadays it's just everywhere. And in the black female, white male's case, they look like high school. They look like high school kids. They were just walking down the street I was driving past. And I came up on a red light. And I don't know why, but black females that are in interracial relationships will do this. They will do this particularly when they see black men, or maybe it's just the way I'm perceiving it. They will try to make sure that they make eye contact with the black male, even if you're trying not to look at them. This couple was walking towards me, okay? And when she, on the sidewalk of the street where I was stopped at the intersection, it was like she was trying to, in a sense, get my attention, because as she was walking past, at first, her and the white boy, they were just walking side by side. And, I could tell they were together. But then, it's like, I know she saw me. I briefly glanced over there. She looked right through the windshield of my car at me. Then she goes to hold this guy's hand and, pull him close to her. And right as they start to walk past the side of my driver's side window, they kiss. Now, I know, and to no surprise, this is a dark-skinned black female, about Serena's complexion. And, she was straight. She wasn't no dime piece, but she was straight looking. And, of course, I know why she did that. She did that because, ironically, she's of the belief system that I am like most of these Captain Save-A-Ho simp-ass Negroes. Or like I am like I used to be 6 years ago. Now, 6 years ago, if I had seen some shit like that, it probably would have done a number on me. But now, I didn't even blink. I just kept looking forward, waited for the light to turn green, and drove off. Because, see, now it has no fucking effect on me. And it has no effect on me for 2 reasons, which is going to bring us into the subject matter of the title in this video. Number 1, because I don't, now knowing what I know about the modern day black female, and really females in general, I know she is not my friend, she is not my ally, and she most certainly is not my woman, okay? From the moment these females stepped off the slave ships with us, they're slave masters, okay? What the hell do you think that whole Django Unchained Sheba character was about? What do you think that was about? That's the first reason why it doesn't bother me. It doesn't faze me. I don't expect, see, because I understand what a lot of these weak-minded ass Negroes do not understand about the black female, and really females in general. Okay? It's like, and I explained this on a couple of live streams that I went on. I think both JPVs and Obsidians. I said, see, if you go into a situation expecting something and you don't get what you expected to get, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be angry. You're going to be pissed off. You're going to be sad. Depending on the situation, you might even get traumatized. But if you go into a situation expecting the right thing or expecting nothing at all, then it's not going to faze you when that which you expected either doesn't happen the way you expected it not to, or it happens the way you knew it was going to happen. Okay? So it doesn't bother me. But then there's a second reason why I don't let this type of shit get to me. It doesn't bother me. The second reason is because I know that these females, these black females and all this swirling crap, there is a nasty little secret that's not so secret anymore that they're trying to keep under wraps by not talking about it. And we've discussed this before. This is not the first time. But that secret is that these white boys and these white men that they're dealing with, the truth of the matter is, they're not treating these black chicks any better than the black chicks claim these ain't shit niggers were treating them when they were fucking around with them. As a matter of fact, we can even go as far as to say that these white men and these white boys that these black females are fucking around with are treating them as badly, if not worse, than these ain't shit niggas that they love to talk about all the fucking time. See, choosing character over color was just a cop-out. What they're doing is they're choosing color over every goddamn thing. And it's blowing up in their goddamn face. One by fucking one. But they're scared to say anything about it. Because just like in the case of the Veganator, if they say anything about it, they'll look like the fucking fools that they are. See? See, what they're not telling you, they're proud to talk about, how the minuscule, 3% of black women that can actually get a white man to marry them, they have, the most successful marriages, or their marriages last longer than even white men with white women, which dwarf the amount of black females with white men by, light years. We ain't even got to go into that. That's obvious. But what they don't want to talk about is what's going on behind closed doors. And I'm not just talking about the rough sex. They don't want to talk about the arguments to lead to this white man calling them the N-word and other racial epithets, as we saw in the Madison Amelia case. They don't want to talk about the domestic violence and the threats of assault and battery by these white men. They don't want to talk about the silent and a lot of times open rejection and dissing that they get from the white man's family when they find out that he's with, dating, screwing, or married to a black chick. They don't want to talk about that. See, they don't want to talk about the fact that a lot of these white men that they're with are cheating on them with other black women, but in most cases, white women. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the fact that most of the breakups are the white dude breaking up with the black female, not the other way around. Because we know most of these females, when they get white men, they don't want to let them go. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about how some of their, soldiers from the Swirl Brigade are starting to, retreat back across the color line, as I told y'all months ago. And are making these fake ass bullshit videos after doing, having trains ran on them by loads of white boys and having one night stands and being ghetto gagged at these frat parties and these house parties and 8 Mile Trailer Park, now all of a sudden claiming to love and want to get back with black men like Paris Milan, because they see that, the other side of the train tracks is pretty much the same, actually worse, because it's all the stuff that they said about ain't shit niggers plus racism. They don't want to talk about that. See, they don't want to talk about these things. They don't want to talk about the fact that they thought they was going to go across the color line and be the white boy's precious jewel, his pretty little black Barbie, and found out that she was just another expletive to him. We can't say that here on YouTube. But no, they don't want to talk about that. No. They want to keep pumping this pipe dream of the pink package. No pun intended. They want to keep pumping this pipe dream of character over color. They want to keep pumping this pipe dream that the white men or the white boys treat them so much better and with so much respect. They won't want to talk about the amount of these white boys that are trailer trash, that are abusing drugs. They don't want to talk about the fact of these white boys that are unemployed living off them like they claim them ain't shit Negroes was doing. Okay? They don't want to talk about how a lot of these white boys, they don't have jobs or can't hold down a job, and that's the reason why they can't get no quality white female, and they just using her as a default. Because the black female is easy to get. They don't want to talk about that. Okay? They don't want to talk about how they got with the white boy because they thought he had all these resources and found out that he was just a broke wigger. They don't want to talk about that. No, they don't want to talk about that. See? They know that, while, their swirling count is relatively considerably strong, there are several of them that are retreating, once again, as I said, back across the color line. See, there's a lot of things that's kept under wraps. And as I said on JPV's stream, on the, talking to Benzo, it's to the point now where, of course I'm going to tell you the story. But you notice how I just went out of my way to pretty much lay it out. Because this is shit this is just a public service reminder that we've already gone through. And you know what? Quite frankly, because it doesn't surprise me, just like seeing black females, and, black males, betray their race, betray their tribe. This shit does not surprise me. Another dead young black female swirler that was, relatively attractive. I won't really call her, she ain't no dime piece by no stretch of the imagination, but another black female swirler whose body turns up dead in a field somewhere at the hands of her white lover, actually her white ex-lover, is no surprise to me. The first time, as a matter of fact, this is pretty funny. The first time I ever heard of a white guy killing a black female swirler was, ironically, of course, the epicenter of race mixing, California. It was all the way back in 2008. There was this black girl called Jacqueline Villa-Gomez. She was like a model, and she was also a child that was adopted by a white family. But she was very dark skinned, very, very black girl, and she was a relatively attractive girl. And she would date number white guys, in a way it was understandable because, she grew up in a largely white setting. But she got with this one guy that came back. He came back from a tour of duty in Iraq. I think he was like a Marine or something like that. And one night, after coming from a store, as they were seen on surveillance video, they got into an altercation. And neighbors reported hearing, I think they were over his house. Yeah. And neighbors reported hearing, a female yelling and, sounding like it was a very intense argument that was going on. And then they heard, what sounded like glass breaking and loud bumping noises against the wall. And apparently what happened, as would come out a few hours later, is that this white guy that had PTSD, he snapped and he beat the living hell out of this girl. I mean, he beat her so damn hard. I'm talking about with his fists, not using weapons. Because, you know, a lot of guys that kill their girlfriends and wives, they use weapons. But he beat her so hard that there was blood splatter on almost every wall in the house. And he had her blood underneath his fingernails. Now, when they arrested this dude, he broke down and he confessed to it. And then I think a week later or something, he committed suicide. This was all the way back in 2008. Now, if you flash forward 10 years later, one has to ask themselves, how many of these cases were these black female swirlers who thought they had made it, you know, they had found their white prince in shining armor, met their demise, either, showing him that black female attitude and thinking that they was going to get away with it like they do with a lot of these brothers, or, finding out only too late that this dude was a fucking, narcissistic psycho, that had sick tendencies. How many of these females have met their demise? And most of it has been swept underneath the rug by not only the media, but these swirlers. See, what the swirlers, the other thing remember I was telling you about the things that the swirlers don't want to talk about? And I had brung this up in other videos. See, the other thing the Swirl Nation doesn't want to talk about, when you talk about the small percentage of black females that, are married to white men, and the percentage of black females that admittedly is growing that are dating and sleeping with, non-black men, primarily white men, okay? Statistically, the numbers of them that are getting murdered and violently abused is on par, proportionately on par with the amount of black females that still deal with black males, mostly dysfunctional degenerates, that are getting murdered and violently abused. See? So if, like, say you have 5% of black females dealing with white males, and you have 1% of those black females getting violently abused and murdered, versus 50% of black females dealing with black males and 10% of them getting, violently abused and murdered. It's proportionate to the amount of them that are messing around with these white boys and these white men. But they don't want to talk about that, see? Which brings me to the point, okay? If every black female, especially with their attitude and their demeanor, if every black female was able to find a white man to take her up, in marriage, or, in just dating, you would pretty much have a similar domestic violence statistic, including murder, including, battery, assault, death threats, stalking, harassment, divorces, as you see with black females with black males. But again, they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the fact that this white male that historically has been known for centuries for violence against his own female, against the entire world, 2 world wars, costing over 100 million lives. And you want to tell me about how much better the white man is? They don't want to talk about the fact that he is fucking them up too. That is the point and the purpose of this video. Oh, did I mention the other reason why I can't get to the Ghetto Gaggers project other than I don't have time? Is because every time I go back into my archive of audios and make a video for something that I should have produced 2-3 months ago, something else pops up and I got to talk about it. Like this case. The case of 19-year-old Mariah Davis. Now, I've already talked for half an hour, but what the hell? At this point, we might as well keep going a little longer. I might as well go ahead and tell you guys her story because we've been winding up to this for the last half an hour, as I just said. Now, 19-year-old Mariah Davis, let's see here, what's it saying? She's been missing for the better part of a week. She went missing last Wednesday, according to this report. And she went missing in, I believe, Northern California, some suburb in Northern California. And she hadn't been seen for a week. They put out an Amber Alert missing persons report, and, they started search parties. They did a GoFundMe to find her on social media. And finally, earlier today, her body was found because her ex-boyfriend, this white boy that goes by the name of Anthony Pimentel, went into a local police department with his father by his side. And I guess he had killer's remorse, and he turned himself in to authorities, and he led police to her body in this kind of like forested park area. And so goes the tragic story. Her body was recovered. They arrested him and charged him on suspicion of her murder. Now, turns out her family, the black family of Mariah Davis, 19-year-old Mariah Davis, they said that her and this dude had been dating in high school, like the two high schoolers, the black female and the white male that I saw earlier today, making out, call themselves making out in front of me. They had been dating throughout her freshman and sophomore year. And then in her junior year, they broke up about 2 years ago. So they've been broken up for 2 years. They were broke up for 2 years. But yet, somehow they wound up back together to the point where things escalated to the point where he wound up killing her, stealing her car, and dumping her body in a field. Now, I've seen on social media, I've seen many things on social media about this. One of the things I saw on social media was that mostly black females, but some white females too, they were talking about how he couldn't let it go, as if he was obsessed with her, as if he was stalking her. And, he tracked her down and he killed her. But there's actually witness and camera and video evidence, from what I understand, to refute this claim. Apparently, Miss Mariah Davis and Mr. Pimentel were seen on video surveillance by the store, and several witnesses, they were seen going into a local store in the area earlier on Wednesday before she disappeared, together. Okay? She did not seem to be in any distress. He wasn't behind her with something jammed in her backside. They seemed to be casually walking together, strolling, through the store, and then they left. And that was the last time that anybody saw her or her car, which also came up missing, but was later found a few hours before her body was. And so what this tells us is that whether or not he was an ex-boyfriend or, they got back together, these two were still fucking each other. Oh, yes, they were. What this also tells us, knowing the mentality of black females, and look, we can see this white boy. He looked like he might be mixed with a little Hispanic, but you could clearly look at him and tell he's white trash. Not just based on what he did. When you look at him, he looks like he does drugs. He looks like he could be fucking Adolf Hitler's, little brother or some shit. I mean, the dude looked fucked up in the face. Okay? Same thing I said about that elementary school shooter in Sandy Hook. The dude looked fucked up. When you look at somebody's mugshot and tell something's fucking wrong with him. Okay? And the one thing we know about black females is that they love these dysfunctional ass dudes. And not only do they love these dysfunctional ass dudes, even in my ex-girlfriend's case, they will get back with these dysfunctional ass dudes. Okay? In a lot of cases, it don't be the ain't shit dude to get back with the female. It be either the female to get back with the dude, or he comes to her and she accepts. She allows herself to be purged back into the crosshairs of an ain't shit dude, or a lunatic, or a violent offender. Okay? Some of them get a kick out of this. Some of them do it because, they don't want to be alone. Some of them do it just to get dick. Some of them do it because they've been in abusive relationships before and they don't know any way out of that type of situation. But for whatever reason or the other, we know that black females particularly, they have a history. They have a track record of getting back with and fucking their ex-boyfriends. Okay? This happens all the time in the black community. And I'm sure some of you brothers have stories that you can share of this, with yourself personally and your boys. I've heard black men talk about females that they broke up with years ago that will call them years later and ask a stupid ass fucking question. Why don't you ever talk to me anymore? Or what you hate, what you been up to? Okay? Because they missed that dick, they missed that attention that they got from that dude that at one point they said he was an ain't shit dude, whether he was or wasn't. Okay? So the likely scenario is, based on the facts that we know, okay, that they were seen in the store together, walking, hours before she disappeared, that they were likely together fucking each other. She likely got back with this dude, which is pretty funny because she fit another stereotype, according to her family, if this is indeed the case, of the black American female. Because her family members also admitted that one of the reasons why they broke up 2 years ago was because Mr. Pimentel, or however you pronounce that, was putting his hands on her. He had actually physically abused her before. Okay? And I don't know if it didn't say anything about whether or not she got a restraining order, but he was beating her ass. Okay? Before. And black females, like my ex, like so many of the ones that we know, they have a history of getting back with these guys that beat them up, that abused them. Okay? They have a history of this. This is no secret. This is nothing new. This is stuff that we know. Okay? So he was not, these females on social media talking about he was obsessed and he couldn't let go. They love to paint the female as a victim. Like she didn't know the dude was stalking her and he snuck up behind her and put a bag over her head and knocked her out and kidnapped her and took her to some deep, dark, wooded area and had his way with her. No, that's fucking bullshit. That's not what's happening in 90% of these cases. In 90% of these cases, these black females are putting themselves back in the belly of the beast. Because again, some of them get off on that. Some of them, they get lonely and desperate. And some of them just want that dick. And some of them, they don't know them. They're so mind warped, from growing up in that type of environment and being with those type of dudes. They don't know any different. They don't know any better. Okay. So it's conceivable to believe that she got back with this dude that just, and they were probably with each other and secretly, because everybody acts like this is something new, seeing them back together on this store surveillance video, they probably had been fucking each other for a while since they broke up 2 years ago. Okay? And so it's conceivable to believe that she was willingly with this guy and probably willingly went with him to a certain point, to wherever they went. They probably got into some type of altercation. And, he got to beating on her again, and he went a little bit overboard. They didn't say how she died exactly yet, but, he went a little overboard and killed her, got scared, and tried to bury her body. Later on, he got killer's remorse, or, he started getting, he started getting paranoid and decided to turn himself in. Okay? So, the legitimate question has to be asked. Okay? Legitimate question has to be asked. Now, this is another swirler dead, and, I don't know her history, but if her history is like most black girls in California, she's probably fucked and been with more white and non-black guys, than she has been with black guys. Okay? And again, that was her business. But it all leads me back to why I say seeing black females with these dudes does not bother me anymore. Because A, they don't matter to me anymore. And B, I know, just like what I told y'all about the truth about pedophilia in our society and how people pretend to act so outraged, but these pedophiles, they get away with raping these children for 20, 30, 40, 50 years before they finally get caught and locked up. I know that these black females, and particularly these black female swirlers, there is a dirty little fact that's not so secret that they're trying to sweep underneath the rug. But see, there's so much shit being swept underneath the rug about these swirling relationships that rug is starting to get a bulge in it. And people walking on the rug and walking past the rug are starting to look and notice that fucking bulge. So you can only sweep so much shit under the fucking rug before it starts to pile up. And it makes the rug change shape to an abnormal shape that it's not supposed to look like. Because again, the rug is supposed to be flat with the floor. But now see, the rug has a bulge in it from all of the bullshit that these swirlers have been sweeping underneath it. So now it can't help but be noticed. You don't even got to lift it up and look underneath the fucking rug. And the fact of the matter is, what's underneath the rug is that, once again, these white boys and white men, of course, not in every case, not even in most cases, but in proportionate amount of cases, just like in a proportionate amount of cases with these black men that are with these black females, are beating their asses, are stalking them, are harassing them, are divorcing them, are taking their children, are taking them through court, are setting them up, are calling them the N-word and all kinds of other racist words, are cheating on them, and treating them just like any other hoe that he's been with. If it's the wrong type of white guy, they get the exact same treatment from him that they would get from one of these ain't shit niggas that they love to talk about and harp on all the fucking time. But again, they don't want to talk about this. But it's okay. Because hell, that's what I'm here for. Talk to you later, guys.